Welcome to Brașov. This is our third stop in our Romanian adventure, and we're going to be spending the next week in this very cute mountain town. In this video, we'll show you the best things we ate, the coolest things we saw, and if you stay tuned to the end, we'll give you a tour of our Airbnb and a breakdown of all of our expenses.
So our first stop on our first day exploring Brașov is the Council Square.
This is an absolutely beautiful square. The buildings are super colorful, there's a gorgeous fountain, and it's surrounded by a bunch of restaurants and bars.
So the main square is a little more busy than usual because there's a car show going on, which is really cool to see a lot of cars that we didn't know of.
Yeah, there's a ton of like European brands. We did also see a couple of like very cool American restored cars as well. They had a Trans Am Firebird with like a big Firebird emblem painted on the hood.
Stingray Corvette too.
Yeah, they did. It was very neat. But now looking at all the restaurants around the square, I've built up a little bit of an appetite, so I think we're gonna grab something to eat.
We finished up our delicious lunch at Mustara.
Yeah, I actually had plans to go somewhere else, but we were walking by and they had the chalkboard out with their menu of the day, and we're so used to getting that in Mexico. For the choices to start, they had 3 different soups. I got the potato cream soup.
And I got the bean and meat soup.
Yeah, both were super delicious, and then we both got the chicken schnitzel with mashed potatoes and a cabbage slaw, and all that was just 40 lei each. They happen to also be a artisanal brewery, so I got the French ale.
And I got a Hefeweizen.
Both of the beers were solid, and overall it was a very nice price. We were happy with it, but now we are going to continue on. I think our next stop is going to be the Black Church.
We just finished up in the Black Church. It was 25 lei per person to get in. Construction started in 1383 and it was finished in 1476.
This church is the largest Gothic style church from Vienna all the way down until Istanbul, Turkey. It is a very imposing building, and the reason that it is called the Black Church is because there was a huge fire in 1689 where most of the town of Brașov actually burnt down, and the church itself was like stained black by all of the soot and ash and smoke. I have to say that it on the inside is not quite as impressive as it is on the outside. They did have some old style pews though, which had some really nice artwork on them, and it was just kind of cool to see the style of the wooden pews from back then. But overall, I mean, it's definitely worth a visit. It's one of the main things to do here, and from the outside it looks spectacular.
In addition to the car show in the main square, it seems like they're doing some sort of street race today.
Yeah, we were just walking around town and we heard all these revving engines and we just kept following the noise. And it's really interesting because there are like Ferraris and there are cars that look like F1 cars. And then there are like souped up Subarus. So it's a wide range of vehicles. Not sure exactly what's going on, but it's cool.
After all that walking around, I decided it was time for a drink.
And we came across this wine bar, so we each got a glass of the local dry red wine. I think it's a Fetasca Negra is the wine. We've had that grape quite a few times now, and we enjoy it every time. The 2 glasses were a little pricey, but they were good.
Now we're getting ready to head out to dinner.
Yeah, we're definitely getting a little bit hungry. And I have to say that the temperatures here in Brașov are quite a bit cooler than what we experienced in Oradea or in Sighișoara. And so I'm definitely in the mood for some more of that hearty Romanian food.
This ended up being our second favorite meal in Brașov. The jug of local wine, hearty bread bowl soup, and flaky beef pastry were all amazingly delicious. Today's our second full day exploring Brașov, and you might have noticed in the footage from yesterday that Brașov has some letters that are kind of like Hollywood's.
Yeah, and normally you can take a cable car up and do a little tiny hike and you can get a great view from those letters. But unfortunately, it looks like right now the cable car is out of commission. They're doing some updates on it. So unfortunately, I don't think that's in the cards for today. So instead, I think we're gonna check out some of the walled part of the city.
So as we've been walking around the wall, we've come across a few towers, but this structure behind us is the coolest one we've seen so far.
Yeah, this is Catherine's Gate, and it looks super castle-y. It kind of gives me like the Walt Disney Castle vibes. Absolutely beautiful.
Just finished our lunch at Bistro del Arte.
The food was really good. We both got a soup to start. I got their turkey soup with semolina dumplings.
And I got the French onion soup, which was cooked in a volcano, I think. Super hot.
It was molten hot, but I think it was the most delicious French onion soup I've ever had. Then I got the slow-cooked chicken, which came with an apple horseradish sauce. That was super delicious.
I got the pork neck schnitzel, and it came with a garlic sauce on top of a bed of mashed potatoes. It was excellent.
Yeah, highly recommend that place. Super delicious, and the price overall was pretty reasonable. I don't think anything here is going to be as cheap as it was in Oradea. Oradea was like one of the cheapest places we've ever been, so we always kind of compare it a little bit to there. after walking around the wall for a bit more, David figured that we had earned ourselves a drink.
So we stopped into Typografia, and I ordered an Imperial Stout. It was oddly light, and I think it was really a pale ale.
Yeah, he asked the waitress, he's like, is this stout?
Yeah.
She said, yeah, so I'm not sure.
I think she was lying.
I got an interesting beverage. It was an alcoholic tea. I've never had that before. It was a hot Earl Grey tea, and then they put a little bit of Jameson whiskey in it and a little bit of Bailey's. It was quite tasty. Really enjoyed that. Today we are starting our day with a pastry that we've seen all over Romania. It is called a kovrig. And yesterday when we walked by this shop, there was just a line of people and then everybody was walking by with one. We've got one here that is cherry and then one that is chocolate. And you can see it is just like a circle kind of pastry. And then you can see here that this one has the cherry filling on the inside. And then this one is filled with chocolate. All right, let's check into the cherry one here. So it is definitely a bread-like consistency. It looks kind of pretzel-like, but it's not a pretzel consistency. It's nice and fluffy. And it does have a nice like kind of sour cherry jam on the inside. The chocolate one is a little bit crispier. And it tastes like real milk chocolate inside, not like a chocolate syrup or anything. Very good, I like them. Good way to start the day.
Now that we're all fueled up on carbs, we're going to hike up to some of the higher towers around the city.
Yeah, there's both the Black Tower and the White Tower, and they supposedly provide some great views of the city. And since the cable car wasn't working yesterday, we didn't get the views from the Brașov sign. We're going to try again today. And our first stop is the Black Tower. Let's get down that hike.
The hike was quite short, but a bit steep.
Yeah, pretty easy. When you get up to the top, there is a viewing platform where you do get a fantastic view of the city. And unfortunately, the tower itself is closed, so you can't go up in it.
On the backside of the Black Tower is a path that leads to the White Tower.
You can alternately take a bunch of very steep stairs up from the center of town to the White Tower. It also has a great viewing platform and unfortunately is also closed. You can't go inside.
Well, after all that hiking, I think we deserve another treat.
Yeah, when we were in Budapest, we did have the chimney cake there, but they're also super popular here in Romania. And here they're called curtocollaș, I believe. I probably butchered that, but hey, I tried. So we're gonna go see if we can find a place that has them and maybe get a coffee as well.
Wow, that chimney cake was quite delicious, but it was a lot different than the one we had in Budapest.
Yeah, it was also much cheaper than the one we had in Budapest. The one we had in Budapest we got with one bottle of water, and I think it was almost $15. The one we had here we got with 2 flat whites, and it was like $12.
Yeah.
So a much better deal. But the one here was much more bready and thicker. The one that we got in Budapest was very thin and very long. This one was shorter and fatter and thicker. But I did really enjoy it. It was quite tasty. We got the one with cinnamon sugar again, which I think is the most traditional one, and very yummy. We'll have to try them again here in Romania just to see if that difference in that thickness and breadiness is like a Romanian versus Hungarian thing, or if it just happens to be the difference in the 2 stores that we got them at. But I think we're going to continue to walk around a little bit and enjoy the sun on this beautiful day.
So now we're on Rope Street.
This is actually the 4th narrowest street in all of Europe and the narrowest street in Western Europe and certainly the narrowest street in Romania. And at its narrowest point, it is just 44 inches. You can see here, I can touch both walls at the same time, and I'm pretty short.
So this street was actually used for firefighters back in the day. It was an easy way for them to get from one side to the other. And as you can see, these walls are pretty decorated with graffiti.
So we just stopped by the little corner market to pick up some things. We got these giant 2-liter bottles of sparkling water. And then we got this giant thing of tomatoes. We got a focaccia type bread and a ciabatta roll. We have a thing of 10 eggs. We have some cheese and some salami and then 3 apples. And the total for all that was just 50 lei.
So we took a stroll down the main shopping street.
And I did notice that they had a sterling silver shop. And if you've watched any of our Mexico vlogs, you know I can't resist buying some sterling silver earrings. So anytime I wear these now, I will think of Romania. And these were 160 lei.
So we just walked about 15 minutes outside of the old town to St. Nicholas's Basilica.
It is an Orthodox church, and unfortunately sometimes that means that you can't take video or photo inside, and that's the case here, but it is extremely beautiful. There are some photos on Google so you can kind of see what it looks like, but it's definitely worth the walk outside the walls. Additionally, they have a cute little cemetery here as well. So I think we're going to continue to explore this area a little bit. It looks quite adorable.
We just finished up on our amazing dinner at Old City Pub, Shiki Shore.
I think we have found our favorite restaurant here in Brașov. The food was fantastic. Those are actually the best meat I've had so far. They had a lot smoother texture and they were a lot juicier. I think the meat was a little higher fat content. Very, very delicious. The fries were like this weird curved shape. They almost looked like celery sticks. So there was more of that like crunchy outside. So good. And then you got the
pork ribs, which is amazing.
So good. They had a nice smoky flavor. They were perfectly tender, really, really delicious.
Nice barbecue sauce that came with it.
Yeah. And then the brown beer that we got was so good that we actually ended up splitting 3 500 ml bottles of it. Really, really good. Definitely our favorite place. And the prices were so good, much lower than what you found in the center of the old town. And like we said before, we only walked like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes outside of the old town. So definitely worth coming out here to eat at this restaurant. Our favorite.
This morning we got up bright and early to take the 1-hour train from Brașov to Sinaia.
The reason for that is because they have an absolutely gorgeous royal castle here. It is Peleș Castle, and it's probably the second most popular day trip from Brașov. The most popular is to do what is supposedly Dracula's castle in Bran, and that is a medieval castle. However, there's no proof that Dracula ever, or really Vlad the Impaler, ever actually stayed there. So we decided to skip that one and do Peleș Castle instead because it is supposed to be extremely beautiful. So we have now arrived at the train station and we're going to try to get a cab to the castle.
After a 30-lei taxi ride, we made it to Peleș Castle, which is said to be one of the most beautiful castles in all of Europe.
Which maybe the inside is, but from right now, the outside is just scaffolding. Honestly, I couldn't be more disappointed. I was super excited to see this one. We'll go ahead and put a couple of pictures on screen now of what it looks like when it isn't covered in scaffolding. It is gorgeous. And you can tell like the surroundings here are beautiful. The leaves are starting to change color and it's like in the mountainy forest. It would be spectacularly gorgeous, but it's just one of those things.
Peleș Castle was built between 1873 and 1914. Its inauguration was held in 1883 and it was constructed for King Carol I of Romania. It cost approximately $120 million adjusted for inflation, and between 300 and 400 men worked on its construction. It was the first castle to have full electricity, and this castle also has a working elevator and forced air heating, so it is quite modern. The reason that this castle has a slightly German appearance is that the architect was German, Johannes Schultz. After the Romanian Revolution in 1989, Peleș Castle was open to the public, and now it receives between 250,000 and 500,000 visitors every year. At this point, we continued on to the third level, and as you can see, it is much less ornate than the previous two.
So even though the outside was a little bit disappointing, the inside was absolutely spectacular. And it was 50 lei per person per floor.
Yeah, I would recommend definitely doing obviously the ground floor, but that is both the most beautiful and the most crowded because everyone does that option regardless of which ticket. That's the smallest ticket. Then the second ticket you can buy includes the first floor. and the ground floor. That was very, very beautiful. There was the concert hall, there was the actual king and queen's private bedrooms. That was definitely worth it. The second floor, however, was just mostly the like ladies in waiting chambers. They had the guards chambers.
The regular apartment type thing.
Yeah, so it wasn't anywhere near as spectacular, and I don't think it was worth the money to do the third and final floor. I would just do the first two. But it was so beautiful. The castle itself was built relatively recently as far as castles go. So it was beautifully preserved because it hasn't had, a bunch of time go by and a bunch of damage to have been done. So it was really, really worth it. I'm glad that we did it. Obviously, I wish there wasn't scaffolding all over the front, but hey, what can you do?
So we decided to walk back down to the train station from the castle.
Yeah, there's quite a few little stops along the way that I found on Google Maps. One was what was called the authentic Romanian street, which is actually just kind of like an artisanal market. It was kind of funny because they did have roasted corn, so they had elotes, and then this guy had like hand-painted tiles that even had Frida Kahlo on them. So I felt like I was back home in Mexico for just a moment, even though the temperature's not there. Our next stop is a monastery, and then there's a few more little stores along the way that we're going to stop at before grabbing something to eat.
We're just going to check out the monastery. It was free to enter, but they don't allow photos or video inside.
Yeah, it was very beautiful though, so if you come, I definitely recommend checking it out. Our next stop is the old casino.
Just finished over lunch at Bistro 27. I had a flap steak with fries and a salad. Really, really good, actually.
Yeah, and then I got the slow-cooked brisket khachapuri, which a khachapuri is like a bread from the country of Georgia, which has cheese on the bottom of it. And it was so fantastic. We did get a full bottle of wine, and then David talked me into getting the lava cake at the end. We also, I think, had, was it 2 or 3 bottles of sparkling water? So overall, it was a fair price. I think it was the most expensive meal we've had thus far in Romania, but for all we got, totally worth it. We super enjoyed it. I think now we are going to just kind of walk around the town a little bit. I have to say, if you have grown up in the south of the U.S., you may have heard or visited a town called Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and this town very much reminds me of that. At one point, Romania was actually ruled by the Saxons or the Germans, and this was their little vacation-y mountain town. So you see a lot of German architecture, and you see that same thing in Gatlinburg. It's just so cute. I absolutely love walking around here and seeing the leaves change. It's awesome.
It's an outlet. Okay. Our last stop here in Sinaia is Castle Sturbe.
This castle was actually built by the same king who built Peleș Castle. Him and his wife, they had one daughter, and unfortunately she died from scarlet fever when she was just 4 years old. And after that, his wife went through 14 miscarriages and stillbirths. And was never able to produce an heir. So he adopted his nephew, and he built this castle for his nephew and his wife because the nephew's wife really hated Peleș Castle. She said it was dark, it was dreary, and it absolutely looked like a man designed it. So she wanted this instead. Now this building is a museum, but we don't quite have enough time to stop and visit it. I think it's only like 30 lei to visit if you decide to. Like I said, they've turned it into the town museum with all the history and everything. And just for a timeline, we took the 9 o'clock train from Brașov, and we arrived here at like 10:10, and we did the 10:45 English tour of all 3 floors. We finished up from that at about 1, and then we just had our little long lunch. But we do have to get back to the train station for our 4 o'clock train back. So this was our Airbnb for the past week in Brașov. Alright, so here when you come in the front door, you can see we had a place to hang up our jackets, a little place to put our sunglasses, good radiator heat, very strong, we needed it. Nice L-shaped couch with a little table. Unfortunately, there was no TV in the living space. Had some shelves there. You can see cute little kitchen, dining set. And then you come through here, and we had a washer. Obviously, we had a toilet, another radiator, and then this cute little shower. And then finally, here was the bedroom. 2 nightstands. This bed was terrible. It sagged in the middle, and it would like groan and creak every time you got on it. It was not very well supported. But you can see there, I had a little space to do my makeup, little closet, and then of course we did have the TV here in the bedroom.
And now for that cost breakdown. We spent $356 for 7 nights in that Airbnb. We spent $64 on transportation, $77 on entertainment, $91 at bars and on alcohol. We spent $334 at restaurants. Boy, the food in Romania is incredible. We also spent just $50 on groceries. Finally, we spent $39 on personal care. That grand total, $1,011, or just $144 per day. Thanks for watching, and as always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please leave them down below. If you haven't already, check out last week's video where we visit the medieval town of Sighișoara.